Today I wanted to give a review for a third-party product for the Cypher system, Cypher Shorts Volumes 1 and 2 by Underground Oracle. These are a series of short scenarios that, depending on your group, could either be used as a short one-shot game, or injected as short side adventures for your existing game. I'm going to review both together since they're similar enough and short enough that it makes sense to do so. Since it is not a system in itself, I can't rate it the same way I do with my actual system reviews. Instead, we're going to talk about some pros and cons, and at the end I'll give a personal conclusion and explain a little on why I gave it that. I do have to state up front that Underground Oracle did supply me with free copies to review with the understanding that I'm going to be as honest as I can with it, and I promise nothing as far as the final results. For those that have seen me go through content before, you know I can dig pretty deep and sometimes find flaws even in projects I'm interested in or passionate about. I've not been paid to do this review in any way, nor have I been given any other bonuses or content as incentives. So let's go through Cypher Shorts Volumes 1 and 2 by Underground Oracle. First, let's start with the art. The majority of the art in the book seems to be a mix of artists and art styles licensed inside, with the covers for both books done by the same artist. The covers are gorgeous and professional, showing stunning action sequences. The art inside, despite being a variety of art styles, doesn't actually clash with each other like you'd probably be worried about. Especially since the different pieces of art are often used for different scenarios. And for small developers, of which I am one, I personally understand the difficulty of obtaining art while trying to stay within your budget. Because, well, for obvious reasons, you don't want to resort to something like AI art, especially when there's so many artists out there willing to work with you. And frankly, there's no piece of art in either book that I dislike. They're all pretty good. The layout of the book is nice, in that it follows a similar formatting to existing Cypher books, with the dual content columns and a third smaller column for sidebar content. This is the type of thing Monte Cook Games has supported developers doing in the past with copying this style. I think they even went so far as to release templates at one point, although I can't quite remember, and it's not exactly a hard layout to emulate. The text is quite easy to read, nicely spaced, descriptions are italicized, specific names are colored in bold, everything just kind of flows nicely. There were one or two flaws throughout the layouts of the books, but honestly, unless you've done layouts yourself or you have training in graphic design, I doubt you'd even pick up on them. They're pretty subtle. I also really love that each short adventure has its own color in the book, so it's easy to scroll through and make sure you're reading the right text. If Underground Oracle ever does longer form content, I hope they stick with similar ideas in their layout. The only thing I did wish that it came with was a more, just like a black and white plain printable version of these that you could like print out and use at maybe conventions or to bring with you. For rules support, the shorts are written in such a way that you can use an existing character from another Cypher game, because like basically all Cypher content, it's compatible with all other Cypher content. However, it also gives rules in the back for a sort of cobbling together a character using a more curated and hyper-limited set of options from the back of each book. This is meant so that even if you have a basic understanding of how Cypher works, you could sit down and generate a character that's all your own in like less than a minute and be ready to play. This is perfect if you're running these scenarios as little emergency one-shots and you don't want to spend too long setting it up, but still gives the ability to customize and create so you don't have to rely on pre-generated characters. I'm not sure one method would be better than the other. I think it depends on the types of players you have and the time that you have. If your players at least have a basic understanding of Cypher, then I think this method's great and I like it. But if this is their first time with Cypher and these are being run as like intro scenarios, I would actually urge the GM to go ahead and pre-generate characters for the scenario anyways, like you see in some other products, even if it means using the rules in the back of these books to do so. If you know Cypher, you know that stat blocks for creatures, hazards, traps, and so on are incredibly simple, sometimes just being little more than a level, 1 or 2 needed stats like health and armor, and maybe a sentence or two. Underground Oracle doesn't complicate this by trying to develop them into more than they need to be, which is a pitfall that I see a lot of developers doing these days to try and swing the D&D crowd in because they expect a certain level of complexity. Instead, they play into Cypher's strengths and keep the description short, including plenty of GM intrusion suggestions and just give the GM everything they need to narrate and improv as desired. They also didn't reprint materials they didn't need to. It's assumed if you're running these, you have access to a copy of the Cypher system rulebook, a virtual tabletop, or maybe the system reference document. So you don't really need a lot of things reprinted, like lists of ciphers and so on. As for the stories, each volume has 3 short adventures in them. These adventures are designed to act as one-shot scenarios that could take a group like 3 to 4 hours to complete. Some more eager groups might be able to get done slightly faster, whereas groups like mine that tend to get, shall we say, a little sidetracked could actually probably stretch these out to even a few more hours without even meaning to. Don't expect epic tales following the classic hero's journey with a whole bunch of different steps. These are meant to be streamlined and simple scenarios, but they are different enough that none of the scenarios feel like they're the same. And although these scenarios are written with the fantasy genre in mind, honestly, most of them could be very easily reflavored. Ballroom Blitz, the very first adventure, could easily be reflavored to be something like sci-fi with robots instead of creatures, or maybe kept fantasy but given a darker horror element. There's usually a small handful of area names, a few NPC names, a couple of background facts for the GM to keep track of, and of course a list of GM intrusions that could happen during it, which is something I am always a fan of seeing. Each adventure also generally has a clear-cut goal in mind, which is good, as this way the players aren't just floundering around trying to figure out what to do. Currently, they seem to be set at $3.99 each on DriveThruRPG, about $4 a pop. Frankly, at 3 adventures each, with an estimated total playtime for each volume at 9 to 12 hours, plus quick start content and all the little bits of work that went into stories, creatures, GM intrusions, etc., the fact you can get 18 to 24 hours of estimated play out of $8 for both volumes, and that's only if you run the scenarios once. There's nothing stopping you from running them again with the same or different groups. I gotta say, this is all pretty good deal. I mean, I've paid like $50 to $60 on a video game and was lucky to get that many hours of enjoyable playtime. And that's sitting by myself in a cold, lonely, dark basement wondering if I should shower this week, rather than, sharing a couple of brewskis with some friends and playing through adventure after adventure. Ooh, the 2020s have been rough. In conclusion, I'm going to say this is worth a buy. I'm not sure if I can give this a rating out of 5 like I do with my RPGs, because it's hard to make standard metrics to compare it to with other products when there aren't a ton of similar products in this space for this particular quality and type. But especially if your group doesn't have backup plans for those days when you need an emergency game, or if you're a newer GM and you want a baseline to show yourself how a short adventure could flow, the Cypher shorts by Underground Oracle are a great low-cost starting point. I tried to be as critical as I could, hoping to find at least a few more cons to balance the pros, but aside from 1 or 2 tiny formatting errors that probably no one will ever notice, I can't really seem to find much in the way of cons. These give you exactly what's advertised. They're easy to read, easy to run, and the scenarios are pretty diverse and creative. There's a beauty in the streamlined simplicity here, and it just kind of works. Hope that helps anyone looking into these. The links for everything will be in the description below. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a good one,